Well, hi, everyone. It's that time of the month, the bi-weekly cycle again. You are here listening to Certified Forgotten. This is your preeminent, your premier, your most prestigious, that's 3 pre's, horror podcast that deals with movies that have 5 or fewer reviews on Rotten Tomatoes. So odds are, if you're looking for a place that says these are the best horror movies you haven't seen, and it's just a list of John Carpenter films, that's not us. We're not going to do that. But if you are hypothetically looking for uncut gems from the early 2000s direct-to-video period, maybe this is the podcast for you, and maybe this particular episode is for you. But before we get into that, I have to introduce myself, Matthew Monagle. I'm one half of your co-hosts, and I have to introduce my buddy, Matt Donato. Donato, how you doing, friend? How are you?
Doing good. I am on a coast, so I'll let that little slip of the tongue slide.
It worked. And you went coast to coast.
Right, of course. Well, you're not really, and in any case. And also, we do have the market cornered on podcasts with Rotten Tomatoes reviews of 5 or less on horror movies, correct? Like we don't have competition yet, do we?
I will be touched in my heart of hearts when we find out that we've inspired an imitator and somebody who says 4 or fewer reviews, because then we just pack it in. Like, what are we going to do?
If they can beat us on that level, then that's great. I'm going to get more mad when someone's like, oh, 10 or less. And they just have, they open up the world and we're like, no, that's cheating. You've cheated.
Yeah, that is that. You can't go more. You can only go less. So Donato, we always have a really good guest. This week is no different. I'm really excited to have her on the podcast because she brought a movie that I'm really happy to talk about. Will you please introduce this week's awesome guest?
Yeah, and it's also fun for me too, because when we first started this podcast, there were, a list of people that I definitely wanted to bring on. And it's very fun that we're actually getting to a point in the podcast where I feel comfortable digging back and going back to those people that I really wanted on the podcast. So today we have for you all a filmmaker, a writer, horror YouTuber. We have Miss Zena Dixon. Zena, how are you doing?
Guys, I'm doing so well. Thank you so much for having me on.
Yeah, of course. Thank you for letting us banter for like 2 minutes at the beginning there. That was, that was a lot of us talking.
No, it's so enjoyable.
I'm glad to hear that. So, Zena, let's start the conversation as we always do by talking about you. Let's talk about kind of your early days with horror growing up and when you first discovered those first couple of movies or read those first couple of books. What was it, that thing that it first introduced you to horror as a genre?
It was Kevin Tenney's Night of the Demons. And
nice.
That movie just really brightened up my life. I remember when I first saw it, I was probably, I want to say maybe 4 years old. And, my mother she's a huge horror fan. So I kind of just felt like, whatever she watched, I'm going to watch. And, the opening scene, it is an animated opening scene. So I thought it was like a Halloween cartoon, and I was really just mesmerized by it, hearing the music together. And then there was just something about it that I was just completely hooked. So yeah, then from there, it's like you couldn't really stop me. I would just watch a lot of horror movies. And of course, there were some things maybe I probably should have never watched at such a young age. But I think I turned out, fine.
So we have a lot of, sometimes our guests will talk about like those early days and discovery, talking about VHS and going to video stores and stuff. Was that your experience too? Were you one of those people that was just pulling stuff off the shelves left and right, whatever you could get away with?
Yes. And my parents, they were so awesome at the time. They really didn't, I don't want to say, hey, they didn't care, because that makes them sound terrible, like terrible parents. But they were very open with my siblings with what we wanted to watch. And I remember going to Roberta's video store every Friday. And this was in Yonkers, New York. Sadly, Roberta's video store, it doesn't exist anymore. But I remember going there every single Friday from when I was like, again, maybe 5, maybe younger, up until 17, 18 years old. Just renting movies, random movies. And the joy of it was just kind of like not really reading the back, not really reading the synopsis, or obviously not checking Google to see the review. It was just more of, okay, this poster looks cool. Just going from there.
What was your draw? What was your thing? Because everyone who has that same kind of story, they always have like who was it that someone was drawn to the font even? I think that was BJ, and BJ was saying, Oh yeah, like the font would throw me off, and if it was too spooky, I wouldn't get it. But if it was plain, I would get it. So like, what was your go-to on those covers?
It was more of the actual image. So one that I recently spoke about, the slasher movie Popcorn, like that poster, it
Hmm.
looked like a good time. Like I you can't, even though it was made in like technically the late 80s, perhaps it was released in the early 90s. I thought it was going to be maybe like, again, a cartoon, just from looking at the poster. But then when you watch it, it's just like, about these teenagers who's hosting their own, horror movie night. So something like that. Like I loved the green in it, just the fact that there's like a skull in the background. I mean, that sounds weird to say, hey, I really like skulls, but there can be cool skulls. So for me, it was more of like just like that whole image overall. Like if it looked fun or exciting, then I was there. Or even one that's more of a thriller movie. There's this movie from the 90s called Lisa. And I know the font in that one, it is really awesome font. It's like this red thick font. It looks a little horror-ish, and there's like a young girl who's on the phone, and it just looks dark and mysterious, and I don't know. I just thought that the picture was just like pretty.
Yeah, and I'm curious as you were going kind of and discovering this. You've obviously you've written and talked about all kinds of different subgenres of horror and all kinds of different periods in horror, but was there like one typical type of film that you found yourself drawn to more? You like some people get cut their teeth on the zombie movie. Some people it's all about vampires. Like what was the part of horror, that one subgenre that you were like, I got to see every movie if it has X, Y, or Z in it?
So there's I want to say there's like two. So I really love 80s cheese. I'm gonna count that as its
Hmm.
own little subgenre. Just because I feel like there's so many. Obviously, there's so many horror movies, but I feel like when it comes to like the 80s horror, for me, it's like it's the perfect balance of silly and still enough horror. Um, and I just remember my earliest, like as a child, watching a lot of 80s movies. And this was in the 90s. And then when I was a teenager, it was still the same thing. Like you would think because I was consistently watching horror movies since I was a kid. And obviously, I still haven't seen every single 80s horror movie. There's always just one that you miss, or whatever the case may be. But I really love that. And then also I love anthologies. Those are always just such a good time.
Yeah, we overlap tremendously there because number one, anyone who doesn't consider 80s cheese a subgenre of horror does not know their horror then, because that is 100% a subgenre and it is 100% one of my favorites. And also, I'm glad you're calling out anthologies because I don't think anthologies get enough. Honestly, I just don't think they get enough appreciation. And obviously, we also don't have as many. Anthologies are harder to come by. But I don't know. I always have a good time when there's so much to grab from in a horror film, and especially when it's all these short segments and you can have filmmakers have a little fun with it. So I'm glad that somebody else appreciates anthologies as much as I do.
Yay.
And kind of going from there too, you starting your interest in it, watching it and being a consumer and an audience member. When did you start to see yourself positioning or transitioning into the professional side of things? When did you start to think like the creative, the critical, like these elements of the industry? I'm not only interested in doing this, but I feel like I really have something to say.
I want to say it happened when I was in high school. I This is gonna sound so horrible. I think I was maybe a junior, and I took this film class because I decided to take it because it seems easy. You just watch movies, and I'm like, okay, I can do that. I watch movies all the time. So
Mhm.
the first half of the semester, we were just watching random movies, and it wasn't just like horror movies, because surprisingly, that teacher was just so awesome. He showed us Psycho, like wow. But we would watch all sorts of movies in the class, and then he wanted us to create a movie. And I would make movies like when I was like a kid, maybe like 8, 9 years old, but with my little recorder. But I didn't really think anything of it, would really never really show anyone outside of my family. And then with this film class, this was the first time where it was just like, oh man, like this seems like just that this could be really cool to be able to do that. Like where they made such a big deal about it, where it's just like it was kind of like a movie night, but during the daytime, in our class, and where people would, you know, they'll invite some of their friends if they had like a free period to come to check out our movies. And I remember I partnered up with this girl, and she was just terrible. I don't know what was going on with her. She just I guess she just didn't want to be there. So she was just like, oh, well, whenever I would ask her, like, hey, when do you want to meet up? Oh, I don't know. I'm babysitting. Like, how are you babysitting on a Tuesday? But whatever. So anyway, I just remember having to like put it together. And it wasn't even like it was hard work. It was a lot of fun doing that. And even though it was like she really didn't do anything, um, she really didn't do anything, but she did a great job with actually like promoting it for us. Like she was able to get like a lot of people to come to the class to watch it. And there were like, other people in the class who did movies, and I was the only, our team, we were the only ones that did a horror movie, especially since, I was in charge of it. And it was just like a zombie movie that took place in the school, and people loved it. And it was like, I got a little taste of that. And then, my film teacher, he approached me after class and asked me if I thought about doing, going to film school or, everything or anything like that. And so, which I didn't for some reason. I don't know why. I don't know what was going on with that. And yeah, just from there, it was just kind of like, oh my gosh, this is what I do anyway. I really just love watching movies. So I should, try to film. And I just feel like I have like, different stories I'd like to share. So why not?
Yeah, and I feel like you've been a good student this entire time because you have digested everything. You've seen so much, and it's not like you're just out there going like, "Oh, I can make a movie, whatever." Like, no, you're actually you are in love with movies, and you're actually going in and deep diving and picking up all these things as you watch horror. So, the fact that you didn't go to films, I didn't go to film school either, and I feel like I'm in the same boat where my writing is getting better and better as I go, I would say, and not only from just a writing aspect, it's also from I'm just learning more and more about cinema the more I dive into it and write about it. So I think we are students of the craft, I would say.
I would agree.
Yeah, there's if Tarantino can work in a video store and launch a directing career, right? Like anybody who watches 1,000 horror movies is gonna be fine, I think. And I do want to ask Zena as kind of like a follow up question and a last question to this. You recently published this really incredible video titled "Being Enough in the Horror Industry," which, I mean, full disclosure for me was my first introduction to your work. That was watching that video was the first opportunity I had to see you talking about your craft and your industry, and then going back and watching some of the other videos and interviews and things that you've done. That was, and I think a lot of people probably have gotten to know you through that video and kind of branched off as well. When did you feel like, after all this year, you talk about 10 years in the industry and all these things you've done, when did you come to the decision that you really wanted to open it up and have a conversation about discrimination, about being a Black creator in the space, and kind of center some of your experiences and revisit them and be like, look, a lot of this stuff wasn't okay?
Um, Honestly, it was probably the day before I put out the video.
Hmm.
I decided the beginning of this year that I was just gonna just concentrate on like YouTube creation. Just because I did it a couple of years ago, but I didn't stick with it. Just because at the time I was working like a full-time job, and it was like really just, taking up my entire existence. You guys, I'm sure you understand, like sometimes when that, it gets a little bit out of hand, where it's just like you have your passion, but then you also have your day job.
Mm-hmm.
So over the years, it's just like because I like to film, it's like I bought, all this equipment. And so I said, you know what, I'm gonna put it to use. It's just like it's just sitting here, and that's something that I'd love to do. So when I decided to do that, I had like I have like a whole schedule where it's just like, because I'm not, this is gonna make me sound like I'm lazy, but I don't like to I don't like to panic. I don't like to overly think too much about certain things. So, like I remember when I used to do the videos before, it was just like I had no idea each week what I was going to talk about. I didn't even have like a set schedule. So this time around, I wanted to have like a set schedule where it's like this week I'm talking about this, and that. So, and I'm pretty serious about my scheduling, but I don't know. It was just with everything that's been going on, you're seeing, unfortunately, there's just been a lot of negative things that's been happening, not just only to me, stuff that I see happening to other people. And, it got down to the point where, when you keep on getting rejected, well, when I was getting rejected back to back at the time, you just kind of get immune to it. So it's just like, okay, well, since, that didn't work out, obviously I have to, as cheesy as this sounds, it's like I felt like I just had to be like my own little light. Like I had to go back to my passion because it was getting down to the point where it was like I was just, it was starting to affect me negatively where I was literally questioning everything. I mean, stuff that didn't have anything to do with horror. It was coming outside of horror, offline, into my personal life. And I just knew that at this point, okay, I have to just, set myself like up with a schedule, do the videos, just be consistent with the videos and stuff like that. Just because I really enjoy, talking about, horror, like you guys just love talking about it. So I guess again, I just wanted, I just wanted to just be transparent because um it's something that I've never done before. I've never spoken to anyone about it. I mean, outside of like my family, but I've never spoken to anyone about it, and I wasn't too sure how people would respond to it. And I'm thankful that people were like extremely supportive about it. And it was very nerve wracking, especially even just for me to take that chance and decide to even talk about it because again, I was stepping way out of my comfort zone and you know away from my schedule.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I mean, number one, you are the opposite of lazy. Do not think that you are lazy for having a schedule and keeping it because I know what like lazy YouTubers look like. I've seen countless YouTube videos where number one, you have production value. You have actual thought put into the YouTube videos. You're actually like creating content, but on a filmmaker's level, because as you said before, you're like, I have all this equipment lying around. Why wouldn't I use it? And that's I 100% think that's what sets you apart. What sets you apart is the fact that you're putting actual passion and love behind these videos, and it shows just in the value itself. So that's not lazy at all. You're actually doing exactly what you need to do, and so many of these YouTubers out there are not thinking as critically and planning where they should be. So like that is number one what is setting you apart. I can tell you that.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, and I'm curious too. I mean, talking a little bit about the reaction that you've had from people. Obviously, I don't want to, you don't need to name names. A lot of those conversations that you're having, I'm sure, are in the confidence of the people there. But you know, I could get a sense a lot of times from some of the people that were sharing it too that they were just like, this is an experience I've had that I didn't feel comfortable talking about, and I'm really glad that Zena was able to share this because it does reflect some of the stuff that I've had in the writing space or in the creative space. So have you found yourself getting some of that energy back from some of those conversations you've had and talking to other people, other creators in the industry and realizing that like, not only do you have something to say about horror, but you have something to say about being a horror creator?
I have there's been some people where well, some people, kind of like what you said, they were thankful that I spoke up about it and they felt alone. And to be honest with you, that's kind of how I felt. And as silly as it sounds, because you always hear this all the time where it's just like, you should always speak up and stuff like that. But sometimes, it's not because I know, like for myself, it wasn't because I wasn't scared to speak up. It wasn't that. It was just kind of like, okay, this negative thing happened, so okay, I have to keep pushing forward. And I've noticed like there's been a mixture of people where Some of them, they were afraid to say something, or they felt that they were the only ones, so they didn't want to be like that, that person bringing up something like this, because it could be awkward, um, which I totally get. But for the most part, those have been like the main two that I've been hearing from people.
All right, and then last question on that, because I feel like there's going to be people that are listening just because they kind of want to pick your brain a little bit about that creative process too. To what Donato was just saying, if you've seen your videos, if you're somebody who's watched your videos, if you're somebody who is the 14-year-old version of you and is like, I really feel like I have something to say here, I want to start making videos on my own. What advice do you offer to the next generation, to Gen Z, that are going out there and being like, this is the story that I want to tell. I want to do it in a video format as well. I want to have my own YouTube channel. I want to talk about movies. What would you tell somebody that's just starting out? Like, what is the way for them to set themselves apart in your eyes?
Honestly, as this is super simple, I would say just make sure that you have your passion. And I say this because there are so many things that could come your way. It could be like, oh, well, this person, this is what people are talking about right now. This is what's trending right now. Or, everybody actually, hated this movie or hated the show. Should I talk about it? Should I say that I like it, kind of thing? Just keep your passion. Like, there's so many movies that I feel, as an example, that I watched that, it's not trending, as an example. You know what I mean? Or even if it's not, if it's not a movie type of YouTuber, it's just kind of like just keeping your passion, where it's just like, if you are inspired to do it because you genuinely just love making videos or you love talking about a certain topic, just continue to do it. And it's like, I say this because like I'm looking, I've been finding a lot of other new YouTubers coming about, and I love that I'm able to find other people who are just passionate about what they're talking about. It could be, horror movies. It could be about, their vlogging, like their vlogs or lifestyle. It could be about their pet. It's just that their passion always shines through. And I know that that's like, oh, what is that? It's just like, if you just really, really like something, say if you're not getting any views at all, or you're not getting paid for it, would you still continue to do it? And I feel like that should tell you.
Yeah, and I feel like YouTube is the one place where you can't really fake it. When you're on screen and you're on a video, as you just said, that passion is really noticeable. And if you're dialing it in, that is also very noticeable. I've been on some videos before with someone who I have to, rein in myself and just be like, this person does not care about what they're talking about, and what the hell am I even doing here? And that is just such a buzzkill when you're watching a video. So yeah, that passion thing rings really true when you're doing video content.
Well, I think talking about passion, actually, this is going to be our perfect jumping off point for today's film. So we're going to step away for just a second, but when we come back, we're talking about Dead Mary. We want to give a special shout out to our patrons in this part of the episode, and that means reading some of the stuff that they have asked us to read, because we're cool mats like that. So, Mr. Donato, what do we have on store this week?
This week, I'm going to start with Will Ryan, who has quite the question for our listeners. As it reads, who wins this celebrity death match? Lake Placid's cow-eating croc and an armed Betty White, or Crawl's entire family of crocs and a one-armed Barry Pepper?
That's a tough question. So I actually just watched Lake Placid not that long ago, which I feel like puts me in a good position to answer this. And I think it's the bond between Betty White and the Lake Placid crocodile. The fact that she raised it from a baby and helped turn it into the giant monster that it is today. I think at the end of the day, teamwork is all about physical cues, nonverbal communication, and I just think Betty White has that in spades.
Also, it's Betty White, so I'm not voting against the White. There's no way.
Right. She's gonna outlive us all at this point.
Absolutely. Also, unless Barry Pepper is in a church steeple with a sniper rifle, I don't know.
Well, he died in that, so.
Yeah, but he was pretty good for a while.
I don't know.
I'm just saying.
But he's also a Scientologist, so
okay, all right. Should we do the next one?
Let's do the next one.
Okay, let's do the next one. This is from Matt Glazer, and it is a simple request. I am asking you to do two things. Vote and make sure at least one more person does too. Be heard. To find out more, go to 866rvote.org.
Yeah, I don't have anything to add. This is the election of our lifetime, so please go vote.
If you like having a country that's worth living in, please vote.
Yeah, and there's probably a reason that Donato and I have gotten increasingly political over the past 6 months on Twitter. So, if you came for the horror and you started following us on Twitter, you're going to get some politics too. Sorry, not sorry.
Some of my friends from home were starting to talk politics with me, and they're like, wait, we're actually talking politics with Donato? I'm like, yeah, that's how fucked up things are.
Yep, Donato has branched out of horror now. Or I should say fictional horror. Now he's into real life horror as well.
I like it fictional.
It's true. All right, back to the episode. All right, welcome back. So today on the podcast, we're going to be talking about Dead Mary. Dead Mary is a 2007 direct-to-video release. It was directed by Robert Wilson, stars Dominic Swain, who you might remember from Lolita or Face Off, probably Face Off. And it is about a group of 20-something, early 30-somethings that gather together in the woods for a long weekend. There's a couple of different couples that have some contentious moments between them, some relationships that may or may not be on the rocks, some friendships that have probably lingered on a little too long into adulthood and may not have the solid foundation that they once did. But when this group of friends gets together to pass the time, they decide to play Dead Mary, not Bloody Mary. We'll get into that. And what follows is sort of as I've described it to Donato on multiple occasions now, sort of an interesting cross between Evil Dead and The Thing. Zena, I'm gonna start with you and why you picked this, because I'm gonna be honest. This was so far off my radar. This wasn't even, there was no radar that was pointing to this. This is something that I had never heard of, had never seen the cover of, never even thought of it. And we'll talk about it, but I fucking love this. This is now one of my favorite movies from that decade. So what made you want to bring this one?
Okay, well, first, I'm really excited that you like this movie too. I've saw it a couple of years ago, maybe 2013, let's just say. And there's a point to this little backstory. And I really, really loved it like so much. And I was attracted to the poster once again, and I remember when I was looking for, I don't remember which streaming service it was on. Maybe it was on Amazon when I watched it at the time. And yeah, when I saw it, I just kind of just randomly just put it on. When you just want something, you want to hear something in the background while you're, cleaning or doing something. And then, yeah, I was just completely hooked. And before that, before we even started recording, I was telling Matt D that I had a hard time picking a movie because there were so many that came to mind, and then I boiled it down to like top 4. And I know 4 is such a random number, but 4 is my favorite number. I don't know why. I just think it's even, it's fun, So do you guys want to know what the other ones were or no?
I kind of do it. Yeah, I kind of do.
Okay. Well, the first one, I watch a lot of Tubi. Tubi is just my jam. I just love it there. I feel so safe and comfortable. And I know there's like ads, but if you watch Tubi enough, the ads go away. I promise. And then you'll probably get like 1 per movie. Well, the first one I was going to, that I was thinking about, this is, it's this Russian movie called The Bride from 2017. And I just think that it's so creepy because I remember when I was just looking up just like foreign movies, because I like foreign movies. I like a lot of things, obviously, but I saw a picture of this bride and she's dead, but they painted her eyeballs on, and I'm like, what is this? And I just knew I like needed it in my life. But then I was like, I don't know, let me just see. And then another favorite of mine, when I was in high school, I desperately wanted to see this movie called Tamara that was made in 2005. And I know that the dialogue is really cheesy, but I really like witch movies. And it reminded me of this, there was this movie that was out in the early 2000s. It's like a Japanese like movie series, Tomy. And I think it might have been like also like an anime as well, but it kind of has like the same like storyline, but they never actually said that it's like a remake or anything. So I don't know what's going on with that. And I didn't want to like question it in a mean way. And then the last one, well, not the last one, but the third one, um, Billy Zane is in this movie. It's a comedy horror. It's another one from 2007, and it's called The Mad. And Maggie Castle, she also plays in Dead Mary. She plays Lily. She's in it, and also she was in Todd in the Book of Evil.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah,
Oh God,
we know Todd around these parts.
Oh yes.
no! Oh, isn't it wonderful? Don't you love it?
It is one of my favorite like horror comedy TV shows ever. I absolutely adore Todd in the Book of Pure Evil.
The Todd in the Book of Pure Evil musical episode is better than any other show's musical episode ever. Full stop, hands down. Even Buffy. I'm sorry, Buffy, but it's true.
It is. And it still makes me sad though, like, that whatever. Okay, and then the last one was Dead Mary, but out of them, out of all four, there was just something about Dead Mary that really stuck with me because when I first saw it back then, it freaked me out. And I know that it has like, some jump scares that's just like, okay, what was that? That is not scary. Okay, that's how I feel now in 2020. But back then, when I watched it for the first time, it was just like I was really getting freaked out, and I was home alone, and it was dark. Okay, so there was a lot of things that I had going on.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it definitely plays to a certain kind of aesthetic. I would say because there are some jump scares, there's some things going on, but on a first time watch, it's still unique enough, I would say. And Monica, I'll let you take over before I start saying any more. But the direct to TV video vibe of this, I think it plays in its favor, and it detracts a little bit. But like I said, we'll get there.
Yeah. Well, I'll start kind of with talking about the reviews. Normally, we sort of talk about reception towards the end, but I think we have to front load that here because this is a movie that if you look on Letterboxd, it's got a really low score. If you look on IMDb, it's got a really low score. If you dig up some of those old reviews that didn't make it onto Rotten Tomatoes, those are people that are like, this is not exciting. This is generic. There's nothing going on here. They're all wrong. I have not seen people miss the boat so hard on a horror movie in a long time because this, to me, again, first time watch, is a really fun this is the millennial horror movie. This should be the quintessential millennial horror movie. It's about a group of late 20, early 30 peoples who are just like they hate their lives and they hate each other, and then witches take them over. Like this is if there was an anthem for 2020, this feels like a pretty good option for that. And I'm so astounded by the fact that this is a movie that has gotten such poor reviews across the board because it's great. And so I want to say that to the audience right now. Like if you listen to the episode, you look it up and you're like 4.4 on IMDb, 2 point whatever on Letterboxd, they're wrong. We're right. Keep listening to us. Listen to this episode. We're not going to lie to you.
So they are like late 20s, early 30s, right? I do want to get because even
Yes.
I had questions watching the film. Okay.
Yeah, they were talking about having, first real jobs and like getting promoted and stuff like that. So this is a movie that if I had seen it at 29 or 31 or something like that, it would have probably hit even harder than it did at 36.
Oh, you mean like I am right now, 31?
Correct. Yeah, you should have felt this in your bones.
Oh, I felt it right in my bones. Like literally one of the characters is saying like, I don't know if I want to go farther in my professional career because I want to explore my passion and blah. And I'm just like, oh wow, this hurts. This actually physically hurts me.
So Zena, the first time you watched this, kind of sitting down and thinking about it too, when did you realize that, or all right, what would you say, baby, is a good way to put it to the people that watch this and think that or it might just be one of those like blockbuster circa 2000s horror movies, like thinking about diving in and what people are in store for, like first half an hour of the movie, what separates this for you? What makes this something that you'll stop puttering around the house and sit down and focus in on?
So, okay, for starters, the thing that really kind of where I was like, oh, well, let me just, slow down the cleaning just a little bit and just watch a little. The opening scene, when we first see the first character, Kim, the blonde, she is, sitting in the car. She looks a little bit frustrated, looking at her toes for some reason. I'm like, why is she doing that? But whatever. And she's just, waiting there. I love like the feel of it. I love the look of it. And at first, you might think it's like, I feel like this movie is set up like it's supposed to be a slasher movie because you have these friends who are going to be hanging out at a cabin in the woods, and they're going to be drinking and partying, and kind of like what you said, they're kind of just all terrible, just to be honest with you.
Mhm.
But I feel like there's a reason why, and I feel like I personally don't feel like any of the characters are likable, but I kind of usually I don't care for that, but in this case with this movie, it works out well. And just initially when this movie opens up and I see that, it's just like, oh, okay, I kind of like the feel of that. Then immediately when you see her boyfriend and they just have this tension, and it's just like, okay, well, what's the problem? Did they break up or something? Oh, and his name is Matt. So
Mm-hmm.
We don't hold it against us. Don't worry.
Yeah.
So, seeing that, and it's just like a very weird dynamic and stuff like that. And then, when we're introduced to another character, Eve, and it's just like, why is she acting like that? Like, my spidey senses, being a woman, it's just like, I don't like the way that she's looking at Matt. And it's just like, oh my God, did they mess around? It's like, there was just so many things. So it's like, it has like the drama and stuff like that, where it's like you think that it's going to be like a slasher, or that it's just going to be like, what it sounds like it's going to be, like where they're reminiscing about their college days and stuff like that, and it's set up that way. But then there's like little things that tells us as the viewers, like, okay, this may be danger, danger just popping up. Their friend Ted, as an example, I remember they asked about this guy named Ted because they are at Ted's cabin, but Ted is nowhere to be found. And I felt like that added to the movie, because in a way they're already at this cabin in the middle of nowhere. And then even going back to the beginning, the character Matt, when Kim, the first girl, I'm sorry, I'm jumping all over the place. The opening scene when we see Kim, the blonde, sitting in the car looking at her toes, and she looks frustrated, and she doesn't have any service on her Nokia phone, so she's upset. And then we see, the camera kind of like pans and it goes to Matt, and we see Matt walking because they ran out of gas. And basically, his interaction with Kim when they're going back and forth is just kind of like, okay, well, he said that there was nobody at the gas station. So it's like, what is with this isolation? So I immediately like that, and I picked up on that. And perhaps it could have been like, nothing. But I don't know. I just had a feeling, especially even with the name Dead Mary, that we were in for, some type of spookiness, like that I was really going to enjoy.
Yeah, and I like that the kind of the juxtaposition there, right? Like, because there is this movie. We'll talk more about it, but this movie has a sense of scope that is a lot bigger than the movie itself. There are ideas in it that are bigger, which is that fun Stephen King short story vibe, where like the characters are doing one thing, but the world they inhabit is doing another. But I think it's one of those things where we've seen so many Teens in the Woods movies. We've
Hmm.
seen a million of them, and some of them are great, some of them are not. But like, we know the tropes, we know the relationship issues, we know the problems that the interpersonal problems these characters have. We can kind of do that, with our eyes closed. And it just, the fascinating thing about horror for me is the way that you can push just one part of a genre or trope, like one stereotype in the genre. You can kind of nudge it in a new direction, and the whole thing kind of unveils as this brand new feeling for you, because just by taking this group of characters and aging them up 10 years, from 1920 to 2930, like suddenly, you're feeling different problems. You're feeling first marriages that might need to fall apart. You're feeling, like relationships or people that, one of the characters that's dating somebody that is still probably in that 21 to 22 year range. And like, it creates a whole new set of problems. And Zena, you're right. Like, these aren't likable characters, but they're not likable characters because they don't like each other. And they're not super shy about hiding that at this point in their lives anymore. But that's a big part of it for me. So, like, yeah, just like this setup that's so familiar, but having these characters bounce off each other in ways that we're not used to seeing. To me, I was like, well, this is already more interesting, just because I don't know how 30-year-olds act in this situation. I know how 20-year-olds act in this situation. I don't know how 30-year-olds act in this situation when they're not just talking about their teenage years again and again and again.
Right.
Yeah, and playing off the world building too, I kind of like the way that it is such a microcosm film where you're just focused on the cabin in the woods scenario, as both of you have already said. You're just focused on these little characters who are caught in their own world and caught in their own drama and love triangles and cheating and all these things, these dramatic beats that almost get like a little hallmarky at times. You're like, okay, everyone can't have 17 problems going on right now, but they do, because that's what the film does. But then it unveils in a way kind of like, I was thinking about like The Invitation, and the way The Invitation does the same thing, where we are stuck in a domestic situation that feels contained to a house, but then there's that one moment where they blow the entire lid off the whole world, and you're like, oh wait, there is so much more going on here. And I really feel like Dead Mary kind of plays the same trick on us, where again, right with everything you guys said, you know, you have this little world that is crumbling, and we're so focused on these few characters and what's happening to them. But then as everything starts to layer on top of itself, and we do realize, holy crap, there is so much more going on that we're probably never even going to see. It does add that 17th additional layer of like, what the fuckery.
Yeah, and Donato, I think you're absolutely right about that. And I'm kind of curious to get both of your reactions about that first possession. We'll start with Zena, I think, of course, but talking about like that first half an hour where it is a contained kitchen drama for the most part, until one of the characters dies, and then doesn't die, as most of these stories end up going. Like a lot of the people that are going to listen to the show, we talk a lot about horror fans that are in it for the goopiness, the goriness, the scary beats, and the kind of the gallows humor that comes with it. So, Zena, let's start with you. What did you think when the characters started to turn and you got some of those more traditional horror beats in the film?
This is where, again, I keep saying this, but this is where I fell completely in love with it, because I did not see this coming at all. Because it's just like, oh my gosh, he was like all dead and mangled and stuff, and you just thought that was it, and they like showed it and he just looked terrible. But then, when, he started moving and talking, and it was like a nice little twist, because then there's like, it's not what you thought it was going to be. It's not, a slasher. It's more supernatural. And on top of that, it's just like, not only did he come back from the dead, he's saying all these horrible things. It's like he just became a jerk. I mean, they all are like that, but it was just like, it was just terrible, but in a good way, where it's like, I wanted to see more. And I was a little bit confused as to like why it happened, when did it happen, because it was just so, it happened so quietly, like when you think back on it.
Yeah, and I should say, for people that are that have watched it, are looking for that connection. The movie is called Dead Mary. There's not a lot of information available about this because it is unfortunately a 2007 direct-to-video release, which means its shelf life, as far as the internet was concerned, was minimal. But the movie is called Dead Mary and not Bloody Mary because apparently they could clear the rights in every country except Japan with Bloody Mary, and decided to use the name Dead Mary instead. So Dead Mary, very much like Bloody Mary, they even joke about it in the movie. It's the same deal. You look in the mirror, you say the name Dead Mary 3 times, then this thing comes and gets you. But I think, Zena, that's kind of to the point. Like, you're reading this, you're understanding this in the setup. Like, I thought this was going to be a witch movie. Like, the synopsis said witch movie, so I was waiting. I was like, okay, we're going to get some of that, like, Darkness Falls kind of witch or something like that. Like, we're going to have some creepy monster that's going around in the background. And that scene, you learn, like, almost immediately, you're like, oh, this is just like the Evil Dead, your friends are not your friends anymore kind of vibe. And that was another one of those moments where I was like, I was already into this. Now I'm really into seeing where this goes.
Yeah, and even further to that, if you look at the tagline on the poster, because I think I just posted like a picture of it on Twitter to be like, I don't know what this movie is, I'm gonna watch it now. The tagline says she's dying to meet you, or something super basic like that. But again,
they were dying to meet her. ...
Oh, okay, exactly. They were dying to meet her. It still implies that there is a titular her, the Dead Mary. And, kind of spoiler alert, as you've said already, Matt, the Evil Dead vibe, where it's your friends are the evil that is living within the house. You never really see a Dead Mary. There is no creature to behold here. There is no force that is lurking off camera. There is a force lurking off camera, but it's all represented through the characters themselves. And that first possession sequence where you get Matt just laying into his friends and airing so much dirty laundry to,
Mhm.
number one, throw a smoke bomb and distract from him being a deadite essentially, and turn the tables onto these characters who now are all mad at each other because one husband is fucking a bar girl and another girl is fucking the other guy, and it's just, again, it's just this giant, it's like a dream catcher almost. Everyone is connected in some way that they don't want to be. But I think my two things with that scene are, number one, it's fantastic because it's not a slasher, as Zena said. It's not what you're expecting, and it gives you the psychological horror that starts to play in, because what happens next is a lot of characters, again, telling these horrible stories to one another and outing each other in horrible ways to break trust. The whole film is about breaking trust down between the characters until the point where they just want everyone to die. And we do too, as the audience. We don't care about these characters. They're all terrible. We just want them all to die. And that is such a saving grace for the film, because my biggest thing, I think, with Dead Mary is leading up to that possession, that first death where Matt is found gruesomely torn apart and chewed apart. Our lead up is a lot of cabin banter that doesn't always work for me. It's a bit too long, I think. The movie itself is about an hour 45. I was expecting like a clean 90, maybe even like 80 minutes, but that added buffer to get to the point, and really all that, just, Matt and Kim having tension because they just broke up, then Dash and, being the cheater stoner bro, and all of these character development beats, I think they go on for like 10 minutes too long before we actually get to the meat of it. But
No.
we get to the meat of it, and the meat is worth it. It's worth the bite that is taken. My struggles, I'm just laying them out on the table and being honest with you. My struggles were just getting to that point, I think.
You
No,
know,
this was a celebration of every couple I think should secretly break up but never will. Like, don't listen to this podcast, friends, but like the first half an hour of this movie is me being like, I know those people. I don't like those people, and I have to hang out with them at least once a year.
I agree with you, Matt. First, Matt, because it's kind of like I kind of felt that way when I watched it again recently, because I think I watched it on maybe Saturday just to see how I felt about it. Rewatching it again, I do kind of feel like it dragged on a little bit too much, but I was doing some research and I found out that there in the first draft of this movie, supposedly it was supposed to be that the witch, there was a witch who drowned in the lake, and when they played the game they were supposed to like awaken her like spirit, and then she comes after them, and it's just like she was supposed to come out of the lake and stuff. So maybe that's what happened. Maybe they had to like, I don't know, cut down on something, and they had to replace a couple of things.
Yeah,
Yeah, I mean that.
I like the fact that there is an essential monster though. It's actually one of the things I like the most about this movie is that, like the fact that as it goes along and you sort of realize the scope of what might have already happened to this community, it's fun. It's fun to have a horror movie where it's more like The Thing than anything else, right? Like this is an entire movie that straight down to some of the actual like synth bass that they play during some of the possession sequences. Like this is a movie that really gets that the most fun parts about The Thing for a lot of viewers are not the big monster reveals, but the scenes where it's two people in chairs being like, is it you? Is it me? What's going to go on? And then basically layering all this relationship drama on top of that. So I'm interested to see. I'd love to be able to see what that might have looked like with that information still in there, but it kind of works for me despite it. Like I think I might even like it less if it wasn't there, or if it was there.
Yeah, I'm actually gonna say I'm surprised you like this Monagle, because it doesn't feel like a quintessential Matt Monagle, Blackcoat's Daughter kind of movie. I
No,
can draw the parallels, but like it doesn't feel like your wheelhouse.
as long as it's a horror movie about people feeling really bad about themselves all the time, I'm good. This is a horror movie about people feeling really bad about themselves. I'm great.
Like incredibly bad about them. Like these
Mhm.
people are terrible. Every single one of these
They
people are so freaking terrible.
I,
And
I think the one who really gets on my nerves, and it's like, oh, why? Amber, the one who's married to Dash, who's a
Mhm.
yep.
jerk, And it's like, you married him and you know that he's a jerk. And she was really trying to defend him, which we've all seen those kind of, women before, which is fine. Live your life. But then it's just like, are we, can I give away a major spoiler or no? Just don't.
Yes, please.
Yeah,
Yes.
no, yes, please, because I know what you're going to say, and I think I agree with you. But go.
Okay, so when she finds out that Dash, he's dead, he's the undead now, dead Mary possessed him, and he's in the shed, and he's tied up and stuff, and he's basically just saying all these horrible things to her and saying how she's weak and she's this and that, and you think for once that she's going to have a backbone and like really stand up to him. And so she leaves the shed, and she comes back like with some gas, like where it's like, oh, I'm like, yeah, she's gonna set him on fire. And I was excited for her. Like, this is what you need to. I would never do something like this, by the way, but this is what you need to do, okay? And I was excited for. I was rooting her on. Next thing I know, she's still in there and she's burning alive, and it's just like, what are you doing? So I just didn't understand like why it's like she just I kind of felt like she was a little bit useless, and it was just like, wow, like why would you do that?
Yeah, I hated that moment. I am 100% in agreement with you because that should have been Amber's exact moment to light Dash on fire and like walk away, like big explosion in the back and everything.
Yeah.
Like she walks out like an action hero. And instead, just as you said, Xena, she kills herself with Dash. Amber is not possessed. She is just basically corrupted by Dash. Number one, Dash is yelling again the worst things possible, like saying all the girls that he's had sex with and not Amber, and the terrible places he's done it. And Amber is just breaking. And what finally breaks her and causes her to walk back into the shed versus lighting it on fire and walking away is just something along the lines of, well, what happens if, you find out that it's just you and only the rest of the people in the cabin left? Everyone else is dead and stuff like that. And I don't know why that's her breaking point, though. And that's the moment that she walks back into the cabin, lights herself on fire with Dash, and they both die together. But it's like, by them both dying together, she's once again succumbed to Dash, the asshole. Like, he actually wins in the end one more time. And I hate that.
Well, it's a good example of a scene I think that is going to be make or break for a lot of folks. I obviously approach this with a male gaze, so I don't know if you don't have that perspective, if you're watching it, or not if you don't have that perspective, but if you're watching it through the female gaze, if you're watching it through a queer gaze, if you have a different take on that relationship, and especially kind of the abusiveness of that, I won't purport to say that that is a good ending or a fitting ending for that character. What I will say as defense of why I love that scene is I married somebody who has told me multiple times in no uncertain conditions that if things go sideways with the world, if it looks like we're going under, she's just done. There's going to be no surviving in a post-apocalyptic wasteland. She's just going to walk into the woods like Charlize Theron in The Road and just let nature take its course. So to me, that scene made me think of my wife and her basically like, oh, I might be the only one left. What's the point? I'm just going to set myself on fire. We're done here. Thank you. Good evening. Be sure to tip your waiter. That to me was like, I was like, I know somebody who says that's the way that they're going to go out. So I kind of respect her for doing the same.
I love that the scene that reminds you of your wife is the one where a woman lights her shitty, abusive husband on fire.
Oh my God.
I have a very healthy marriage. I don't want you guys to think otherwise. I'm just
I
saying.
know you do.
Well, I'm just saying, within the context of that movie, that was a scene where I was like, yeah, sure, of course, that's what you do. Like, what's the point?
It's so. I think that's where the direct-to-video-ness shows, though, because that moment isn't even cinematically beautiful. It's not poetic. There's nothing to it. It just happens, and the camera slow pulls away on Dash screaming, and we know she's in there, and then it just kind of fades to black, and like the movie moves on, and that might be one of the qualities that really kind of tanked the entire film for some critics. And if you look back on what they were saying about it, it's basically that Dead Mary has no bite. Dead Mary is all, psychological bullshit, and it doesn't really do anything with it. And I don't agree with those takes at all. I think I still am positive on Dead Mary. I think it's still worthwhile for the reasons that have been said already. But the direct-to-video-ness shows. There are like wipe cuts and all these lines that are so throwaway and so just generic in the character arc of the stoner cheater, of the broken up guy, of the other cheaters. I don't know. They're all just cheaters. That's the personality of every person in this film. But it's hard to stomach, I think, for some people.
Well, let me ask both of you then, kind of going off of that. I think that's absolutely correct, Donato. I think that as a DTV movie of this era, you're not really going to get those big horror set pieces that I think a lot of people go for, right? Like there aren't those big moments, there aren't those like big reveals. The camera doesn't stick with it. Like there isn't beauty in the gore for some of this. So for me, as I'm watching this, that's not really been the reason I'm drawn to the genre. We've talked about it a million times, so this works for me. But like, do you think this movie misses out? And Zena, I want to start with you. Do you think this movie misses out for not having those like iconic, YouTube supercut moments of like grossest deaths or most extraordinary scenes? Does it miss by cutting away at those pivotal moments for a lot of those deaths?
For me, no. I think that they were trying to do something a little bit different. Um, because I love the fact that okay, it is. I know that they say that it's a witch, but then it's kind of like okay, is it also a demon or is it a spirit? Is the game a coincidence? Is it the end of the world as an example? Because if you notice, like when I stated earlier, just how there was no one at the gas station. Their friend never showed up. So what's going on? I just felt like they were trying to do something different, and maybe they ran out of time, or unfortunately, maybe they ran out of funds, so they couldn't really do that. But or perhaps they kind of just wanted to leave the mystery, to the viewers to let us to decide on that.
Hmm. Yeah, I do.
It's
I think that's true. Yeah, yeah. Oh, sorry, Donato, go.
No, totally. I don't know if the film quote unquote suffers for the pull away moments, because I actually didn't mind the pull aways on deaths. They do show a few things. They show a garden trowel or what is it? I forget what gets shoved into Dash's face, but there's a gardening tool that gets shoved into Dash's face. We get some stabbings. Again, the first death with Matt when they find his eaten corpse, basically almost like it's so destroyed that it's like sinking into the ground. It's a great shot. There is some good violence and gore if you're just into that kind of horror. I think what hurts more is just, I don't want to say lackadaisical, I don't want to say even lacking, but there are just some technical blemishes here and there where a stronger filmmaker could have sold something with a little more enthusiasm, where again the directed video-ness of Dead Mary does show. I mean, even going down to ADR and sound, there are some scenes, I don't know if you guys had the same experience, but I watched it on Amazon Prime, which it's available on right now, and the audio in some scenes is pretty wonky. Like you can hear background noise, they didn't have a good sound filter, and the dialogue's totally like out of whack with the rest of the environment sounds. But yeah, it still manages to pull off what you don't expect. And if it had been more generic, then Dead Mary would be dead in the water. That's 100%. But it's not generic. It, for the reasons we said, it tries something different, and it takes the cabin in the woods scenario and it just kind of like upends the cabin.
Yeah, I mean, I could see that read on it. I don't know. I love this movie, so I just can't hang with your faults on it, because it's just such a it's the lodge type of caliber, like bad things happening to people that maybe or maybe don't deserve it kind of thing for me, because I revel in how quickly these people turn on each other. I revel in the relationship stuff that keeps sticking with it, and just the fact that they're willing to talk out most of the big dramatic scenes in there, that it's just like people being awful to each other. I'm good. That's my kind of horror. I don't know. I could talk about this for an hour, but this is just like, this was such a great discovery for me that I can't see the faults right now. I'm sure if I stick around a little bit, I can, but I've been sticking with it for 2 days now, and it's all good from where I'm sitting.
That makes me so happy.
Yeah, well, you're 2 for 2, Zena. I do want to say that. I'm on the positive side of it.
No, you like it. I love it, Donato.
All right, fine. That is fine. That is fine.
All right, last question then. As we're talking about this, usually the last thing we want to do on the podcast is talk about, why this might have missed. I think it's baked into the title here. It is a direct-to-video thing. Those are usually hit or miss for folks. So more importantly, I think the question that I want to ask you, Zena, is what do you think it takes for a film like this to find its audience years later? Like, is there an audience that is going to gravitate towards this as we start to think back a bit more? As we that 20-year, 30-year nostalgia cycle kicks in, are there going to be people that are going to discover this and it's going to become part of their canon of 2000s horror, or do you think this is something that kind of is where it is, and maybe some people will stumble across it every now and then, but it's never really going to get the play that maybe it deserves?
I think that people are going to find this movie, and if they haven't seen it, and they are going to watch it, because I've been noticing, because I'm someone who loves 80s horror, but I've been starting to drift away and go to the 90s and the 2000s. So I think that there's a lot of other people who are checking out 90s movies and 2000s movies. So I feel like people will definitely come around, and the type of audience I feel that is perfect for this movie, if you're someone who likes, I want to say, a slow burn, because it does take a little bit of time, like a little bit of time for things to get started. And even when we were just talking about the dialogue, it's like the writers, the director, like they really wanted to give us like a full experience of these of the characters. Even though yes, they are terrible people. And I mean, Lily wasn't that bad, I
Yeah.
guess, but she
Yeah,
was
this is
kind
true.
of weird. You guys liked Lily?
Yeah, she held together for me. I think she was at wrong place, wrong time more than anyone else.
Right. And I don't know, she kind of rubbed me the wrong way because she didn't want to hang out with the girls. And it's like, girl, then maybe you should go home. I don't know. It was just kind of weird that she was there. Like she just only wanted to spend time with her boyfriend, and then she was kind of like giving, like just saying to him, like, well, I don't want to be, basically something around along the lines like, are you guys going to be talking about old times? And it's like, okay, like, I don't know. It was just kind of rude. It was just a little rude, but I agree. She was there, wrong place, wrong time. But I do feel like people who love slow burns, I'm sorry, I got so sidetracked. If, people who love slow burns, I feel like that you may enjoy this movie.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Donato
and
agree?
I'm gonna go back to what you said earlier, Monocle, and I feel like Dead Mary was before its time. I agree that it's incredibly millennial horror. It's doom and gloom, and people suck, and humanity's the worst thing, and we're all the worst monsters living in it. And that's kind of having a moment right now, and it has been having a moment for a little bit. So I think there's a possible scenario where it's on Tubi, it's on Amazon Prime. If people get curious enough to check out Dead Mary, people in our age especially, I was hearing what some of the characters were saying, and it was like my own inner monologue. And that's very important for horror. That's very important for cinema. If you can see yourself in the characters, for people our age, I do think there's a giant connection here to Dead Mary. And I think that's what's going to maybe elevate it, because at the time, maybe the reviewers watching it or the audiences that would appreciate it were too young, or they weren't ready for that yet. I think Dead Mary is a very in the moment horror movie for right now, and I think it could find a resurgence.
Well, I'll be driving that resurgence for sure. All right. So that is gosh, that's Dead Mary. It is, as both Zena and Donato have said, it's available on Amazon. It's available on Tubi. We've talked about Tubi on the show before. Zena's 100% right. Go check it out. It is the perfect place. It is the best parallel in the streaming verse we have right now, other than Shudder, of course, to the idea of just like going through some of the low budget stuff on the video shelves and pulling things off. So if you want to discover random stuff, Tubi is the place to go. Zena, I want to say thank you for coming on the show. And I want to give you this opportunity before we wrap here for you to kind of talk about what's next for you, or where people can follow you on social media. What kind of what project, what sort of things do you want people to know about? What's going to be on your channels and being promoted in the near future?
Well, first, thank you guys so much for inviting me on. I love talking about this movie, and I
Mm-hmm.
really just had a great time. And if you randomly just, if you're someone who really loves, YouTube, if you love watching videos, hopefully you can check out some of my videos. I usually do kind of like a top 4, top 5, top 7 list on, it could be random things. Last week I was talking about slashers. Slashers are always a good time.
Mm-hmm.
And
Awesome.
you can also find me at realqueenofhorror.com. And I'm always on Twitter, and that's just lovely Zena. And those are mainly the three where you could find me.
Nice. Donato, this is the time on the show we promote ourselves. Promote ourselves, man.
I'm gonna do my thing and say you can follow me at Donato Bomb on Twitter, Letterboxd, and Instagram. You can read my writing such places as Slash Film and Blade Disgusting and whatever else is still has a budget right now, as I've been saying. So just follow the socials. I will show you what I am doing right now. But oh yeah, you can also read mine and Mr. Monogle's writing on certifiedforgotten.com.
Yeah, if you are listening to this, I think this airs in August, according to our schedule. Whatever it does, then we are up and running with CertifiedForgotten.com. You've seen some of the past guests of this episode, or these episodes probably come on the site and write for us as well. So be sure to check that out. You can also follow me, just me, nobody else, on Twitter at LabSplice, LABSPLICE. And if you like today's episode, if you like the other episodes you've been listening to, please take a moment, leave us a review. It is a great validation for us because we are writers. And as much as we pretend we don't, we desperately need that validation. And it just lets us know that, we're talking about the types of films and we're bringing on the types of guests that really resonate with you. So be sure to leave us a review, let you know what you think. Zena, again, thanks so much for coming on, and we're gonna have to have you back soon. I think you if the other three movies that you thought about and didn't end up bringing are on par with this for me, I mean, we got to bring you back on soon because I want to watch those other three.
Oh my gosh, yes, please.
All right, Donato, will you take us out in our usual manner?
Demon Wind?
You seem so confused.